It's a pivotal moment in professional sports. For women's sports, for labor rights, for the business of basketball. The league is growing. The spotlight is brighter than ever. And yet at this moment, the players say the terms under which they work do not reflect that reality. The story of the new collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, between the WNBA and its players is not simply another contract negotiation. It is, in many ways, a battleground for recognition, value, fairness, and the shape of women's sport for years to come. This is the story of what's at stake, what the players want, and what happens next. When the 2025 season of the WNBA came to its crescendo, and the champions lifted the trophy, the game and the celebration masked attention beneath the surface. Because off the court the real drama was simmering. The current collective bargaining agreement, the legal and economic framework under which all players toil, is set to expire on October 31, 2025. Let's unpack how we got here. In October 2024, the WNBPA formally opted out of the then-current CBA. That step triggered this moment. The players said, "We want more. We want a new deal. A framework that reflects the realities of a league in ascendance." That decision auto-triggered the deadline of October 31, 2025, meaning both sides face a ticking clock if they wish to avoid a labor disruption. ClutchPoints +1. But this is not a negotiation in a vacuum. The league is changing. Revenue streams are increasing, media deals are expanding, young stars are generating new buzz, and expansion is on the horizon. According to ESPN, the 2020 CBA set the stage for growth, but even so the players and the league both agree, the landscape now is different. Indeed, for the players, the moment feels transformative. WNBPA President Nneka Agwamike calls it a transformative CBA, and says the league must evolve with the players. What's at stake? We'll start with the big picture. What is really on the table? First, salaries. They matter. The headline numbers make for strong soundbites. But underneath those headline numbers are the structures. Salary caps, minimums, maximums, how compensation is determined. According to ESPN, in the last renegotiation, the maximum salaries jumped from about $117,500 in 2019 to $215,000 in 2020. The team's salary cap rose from $996,100 to $1.3 million. But even that growth may not keep pace with what players/women's sport believe is possible now. As one source told ESPN, a team's salary cap in the $4 million to $5 million range, and maximum player salaries approaching $1 million, are now conceivable. ESPN.com +1. Second, revenue sharing. This is perhaps the most contentious issue. The players argue, "We built this business. The league is booming. Media rights, sponsorships, attendance, global interest. Why aren't we participating in that growth in a meaningful way?" The principle is simple. As the pie grows, so should our slice. Yet the system under the current CBA is more rigid. The WNBA CBA lacked a built-in, flexible, revenue-linked mechanism. The salary cap and maximums were modestly raised, 3% annually, and based on historical revenue targets tied to pre-pandemic 2019 numbers. That meant growth after the pandemic was baked into a model that had unrealistic targets. The players believe this model no longer works. They want a structure where growth in league revenue, ticket sales, television rights, sponsorships, merchandise, means growth in their compensation. They want to feel part of the bottom line. They want a legacy. Third, working conditions and benefits. Pay is vital, but so is context. Travel, roster size, scheduling, overseas commitments, player welfare. These are all part of the equation. The 2020 CBA made strides, increased team travel standards, improved off-season protections compared to earlier agreements. Wikipedia +1. But players say the league is still behind. Some overseas leagues offer far higher pay, which forces players into difficult decisions. Choose WNBA salary or overseas income. The prioritization policy, which restricts players' ability to play overseas in conflict with the WNBA season, is a symptom of that tug-of-war. Fourth, shape of the league. Expansion, exposure, the next decade. The WNBA is slated to grow. New teams, new markets, more games. That growth brings new revenue potential, and players argue they must not be left behind as the league builds. For the league, this growth also brings risks. Balancing cost, competitive balance, sustainability. ESPN.com+1. In short, the stakes are high. If the players win big, they reshape the economics of the league and create a new paradigm. If they lose, they may find themselves locked into another agreement that fails to keep pace with the growth around them. Meanwhile, for the league, a failure to agree could derail stability, risk a work stoppage, or lockout, and harm momentum. What the players want. So what is the precise list of demands? It breaks down into major themes and specific asks. A meaningful revenue share model. A key demand is to get a growing percentage of basketball-related revenue, the piece of the pie notion. As one player put it, we want a piece of the entire pie, not just a piece of part of the pie. Yahoo Sports. The players feel the current model is outdated. One where growth happened but the players' share did not. They argue, when franchise valuations rise, when media rights deals get bigger, when attendance and merchandise boom, those gains need to be shared. Higher salaries and increased maximums. The players believe their compensation must reflect the current business. They want not only higher numbers, but also structural changes so that the system works for growth. As Nneka Agwamike said, it's not just about the number. I think it's about the system. One that doesn't limit us the way it has in the past. Improved minimums and broader compensation across roster. It's not only the star players who matter. The median and the minimum must go up to ensure broader stability in the league. The Players' Union has emphasized that compensation for all players must improve. Better working conditions and benefits. That includes charter travel, improved facilities, improved off-season protections, health and family planning benefits, improved scheduling, expanded roster sizes, possibly more guaranteed contracts. The players want the league to catch up. Yahoo Sports +1. Reshaping league policy on player prioritization and overseas commitments. Under the current system, some players feel they are forced to choose between playing overseas for more money or their WNBA obligations. The new CBA must reflect the global reality of women's basketball. A long-term, sustainable framework. Players want a deal that goes beyond the next couple seasons. They want stability and want to ensure that as the league grows into the next decade, the CBA is built for that future, not just for today. Voice, respect, and recognition. Beyond the economic and contractual, players want to feel valued, to have their voices heard, and for their leadership to be respected. Several players have publicly criticized the league's leadership and negotiation tactics. For them, this is about respect as much as remuneration. The heart of their argument: this is our business. They assert they have built value, and they should share in that value. To paraphrase one athlete, if we continued with this CBA, we would, percentage-wise, go down on our compensation. What follows is not just legalese. It is a moral argument. That as the league grows, as the fans come, as the business expands, the athletes who deliver that spectacle should not be left behind while owners, media rights, and sponsors benefit disproportionately. What the league wants, and what it fears. Of course, the league and ownership have their concerns, and the negotiation is a two-way street. The league must ensure financial sustainability. While growth is real, women's professional sports still face structural challenges. Variable revenue, global competition for talent, season length issues, overseas opportunities, and demands on teams. The league's leadership has spoken of wanting a transformational deal, but one that is also sustainable over the next decade. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert has emphasized that the next CBA must be fair for all and built with longevity in mind. She has publicly acknowledged that player relations need improvement. From the league's perspective, big structural issues include competitive balance and salary cap control. The league wants to maintain parity and ensure teams don't blow up the competitive model by one team lavishly spending and dominating. The salary cap and roster rules are part of that. Revenue uncertainty and risk. While media deals and expansion promise growth, they also carry risk. If the growth doesn't materialize or if new teams struggle, the economics could become pressured. Global competition/overseas commitments. Many players play overseas during the WNBA off-season for higher pay, which complicates scheduling, risk of injury, fatigue, and the league's control over its product. Work stoppage risk. A failed negotiation could result in a player strike or a lockout, which would hurt the league's momentum and reputation. The league must avoid a disastrous outcome. Expansion and increasing costs. As new markets open and franchises expand, costs increase. Travel, marketing, player salaries, facilities all escalate. The new CBA must account for increased cost structure, maintaining growth while controlling cost escalation. It's a balancing act. Reward players, but not in a way that the business becomes unsustainable and collapses under its own weight. Hence the league's ask. Yes to progress, but with caution, structure, and sustainability. Commissioner Engelbert told the media the league wants to evolve, but it must be manageable for all teams. There have been several very public moments that have signaled the intensity of these negotiations. 1. At the 2025 All-Star Weekend in Indianapolis, every All-Star player wore a black warm-up shirt that read, "Pay us what you owe us." That image captured the moment. The players unified, visible, vocal. 2. After the semifinals in the 2025 playoffs, veteran star Nafisa Collier called out Commissioner Engelbert during an exit interview, saying bluntly, "We have the best players in the world, but right now we have the worst leadership in the world." That public criticism underscored how fraught the relationship between players and league leadership has become. 3. Players have been expressing that the league's initial proposals are out of touch. For example, star guard Satu Sabali said the initial league offer made her feel we're not part of the growth of the league. 4. Several lawmakers got involved. The Democratic Women's Caucus in Congress wrote a letter to the league, supporting the players' call for good faith bargaining and fair pay for women athletes. Minnesota Spokesman-Recorder. These moments matter because they show the negotiation is not just behind closed doors. It's public, visible, and carries reputational risk for all sides. What happens if there's no deal? The clock is ticking. Because the current CBA ends October 31, 2025, if no agreement is reached, there's a real possibility of a work stoppage, either a strike by the players or a lockout by the league, ahead of the 2026 season. That possibility is not just theoretical. Some players have publicly said they're prepared for the possibility. And while no one wants a stoppage, both sides know the risk is on the table. What are the consequences of a work stoppage? For players, loss of salary, disruption to career, damage to brand, and potential backlash if fans turn away. For the league, loss of momentum, damage to growth trajectory, broadcasting/sponsorship complications, potential brand damage. For fans and the sport, if a season is delayed or cancelled, it could hamper the league's historic growth at a crucial moment. The next few years are arguably key to the WNBA's long-term trajectory. One piece of context. While the WNBA has never experienced a full season stoppage, other leagues have, and the damage can be lasting. The players are aware of that memory. However, they also believe the moment they are in is unique, and therefore worth pressing. Where things stand now. Let's talk status. As of mid-2025, and the sources from July and October, the following is true. The players have submitted their proposal and follow-up to the league. Yahoo Sports. Face-to-face meetings have taken place. For instance, during All-Star Weekend, more than 40 players met with the league's CBA committee and Commissioner Engelbert. But they did not achieve common ground. Yahoo Sports +1. According to multiple reports, the league's initial proposal was viewed by many players as insufficient, with one calling it a slap in the face. The deadline looms. October 31, 2025. The atmosphere is tense. Negotiations are proceeding, but progress is slow and major issues remain unresolved. Expansion and media rights deals are increasing the stakes. The league's business momentum strengthens the players' leverage, but also creates new cost pressures for owners. Some players and union leadership believe the league is unwilling to sufficiently share in the growth, causing frustration and signaling that the union may push hard or even walk away if necessary. In short, the negotiation is active. The ticking clock remains. The stakes are high. But as of now, the deal is not done. Why this matters beyond basketball. This story is about more than the WNBA and its players. It touches on broader themes. Gender equity and pay fairness in sport. As women's sports grow, the question of who benefits rises. This CBA is part of that broader narrative. Labor relations and athlete empowerment. Players asserting themselves, saying they are not just cogs but partners in the enterprise. Business of sport. Media rights, franchises, global competition, athlete mobility, all reflected in these negotiations. The evolution of women's professional sports. The WNBA is at a crossroads. If it gets this right, it could become a template for other women's leagues. If it missteps, it could lose momentum. In that sense, every game, every contract, every statement matters. Possible outcomes. As with all big negotiations, there are a range of possible outcomes. Best case scenario for players. A transformational, new CBA. That means a significantly higher salary cap, higher maximums, broad improvement in minimums and conditions, a revenue share model that grows with the business, improved benefits, overseas commitment rules that reflect realities, charter travel, expanded rosters, long-term growth built into the framework. The players get a deal they feel reflects their value, their contribution, and the era they're entering. Moderate scenario. The league and players reach agreement, but it is incremental. Some improvements in salary and benefits, but the system remains largely similar to the old model. Revenue share may increase only modestly. Some structural reforms, but not sweeping change. The majority of players benefit, but the model does not fundamentally shift. Worst-case scenario. No deal is reached by the deadline. The result, a work stoppage, strike or lockout. That delays or diminishes the next season, causes business harm, may sour the momentum of the league. Even if a deal is reached later, momentum may have been lost. For players, potential income and brand harm. For the league, reputational and commercial risk. For fans, disruption. Given the stakes, many believe the parties will want to avoid the worst scenario, but that does not guarantee a best-case outcome. What happens next? What are the next steps? What should we watch for? Negotiation updates. Any public statements by the WNBA, WNBPA, players or owners. Large group meetings. Media leaks. Movement on key terms. Player activism/public posture. The "pay us what you owe us" shirts were a sign. Will players escalate? Will we see more public demonstrations or comments? League responses. Will the WNBA revise its proposal? Will the league show more flexibility? Will timing accelerate? Deadlines and timelines. October 31st, 2025 is the current deadline. But sometimes in labor negotiations, deadlines slip, extensions happen, and negotiations persist beyond the nominal date. Reports indicate that a missed deadline may not automatically trigger a lockout, but it raises the risk. External variables. Media rights revenue, expansion fee capitalization, attendance trends, merchandise growth, all can strengthen or weaken leverage on both sides. Player market and free agency. Because many players are approaching free agency and many contracts end after 2025, that dynamic could influence bargaining power. Public, legislative, and fan sentiment. With lawmakers and women's rights groups weighing in, public pressure may shape the negotiation. As one article noted, women athletes, like all women, deserve fair pay. Imagine this as a documentary or feature voiceover. We move from the celebration of the championship, to the protest shirts at All-Star, to the meeting rooms of the league office, to the union leadership, to the stakes for the players, to the risks for the league, to the fans, to the broader business of sport. We bring in quotes, we bring in perspective, we bring in emotion, context, history, to illustrate that this moment in the WNBA is more than just salaries. It's about value, recognition, and the future of the league. You might introduce with a championship scene, then shift to the war room, interviews, public protests, the heart of the players, the calculus of the owners. Use a mix of fact, analysis, direct voice from players, via quotes, and projections on what comes next. When the confetti drifted down, the trophy rose high, and the cheers echoed through the arena, it seemed like the season-long story of triumph had reached its climax. Yet beneath the celebration, another kind of story was quietly unfolding. a story about value, fairness, and the future of a league in motion. Because this wasn't just the end of the season for the WNBA, it was the beginning of a reckoning. In October of 2024, the players of the WNBA, represented by the WNBPA, triggered an opt-out of their collective bargaining agreement. The result: a deadline for a new deal set for October 31, 2025. The message was clear: we want more. We want to grow with the league. We want a framework that matches the opportunity, not just the tradition. The league, for its part, had to reconcile two truths. 1. This is a league on the rise. Media deals, expansion, young stars, record viewership. The business momentum is undeniable. The other, growth brings cost, risk, and structural challenge. The league needed a deal that rewarded players, but that also preserved stability. From the players' vantage, the current system no longer suffices. The salaries? Improved since earlier decades, yes. But the improvement has not kept pace with the growth of the league's business. The revenue share model? They're in theory, but rigid in practice, and based on outdated revenue assumptions. Working conditions? Better than before, but players say still insufficient given the demands. At the center of the conflict lies a handful of fundamental questions. As the league grows, who benefits? What will the compensation structure look like? How will player welfare be addressed? How will the league ensure the WNBA remains competitive, fair, and sustainable? In the summer of 2025, these questions moved from boardrooms into public view. At All-Star Weekend in Indianapolis, the visual moment captured the mood. Players, united, wearing black warm-ups emblazoned with the words, "Pay us what you owe us." This wasn't just a fashion statement. It was a call to action. Behind that slogan, the players pointed to media rights deals, franchise valuations, rising stars, record attendance, and asked, when the business grows, why don't we grow with it? League officials had offered proposals, but players called them inadequate. Veteran leaders expressed frustration. "We're not even talking about the same thing right now," one said. Another called the initial proposal a slap in the face. The public tone had changed. The players weren't anonymous voices on the sidelines anymore. They were unified, loud, visible. One old story illustrates the shift. A decade ago, players were glad to have a league. Now, players are saying, we have a league. And a responsibility. A business partner. A voice. And we expect to be treated accordingly. The numbers tell part of the story. In the 2019 CBA era, maximum salaries were six figures. Team salary caps were under $1 million. The 2020 deal raised both the cap and maximum salaries significantly. Yet by 2025 standards, players argue those numbers are still too low for what the league has become. According to negotiating sources, a future where maximums near $1 million and team caps of $4 million to $5 million are conceivable. The players say they want a system built for that future, not the past. Revenue sharing is a focal point. In other men's professional sports leagues, players receive a fixed percentage of basketball-related income or equivalent. The WNBA's model, however, is more rigid, less transparent, and the players feel they've been left out of the growth. One player told ESPN, "If we continued with this CBA, we would, percentage-wise, go down on our compensation." It's about more than money. It's about respect. One of the players, when asked about the league leadership, said, "We have the best players in the world, but right now we have the worst leadership in the world." That kind of language signals a deeper rift than simply dollars and cents. For the league, the risk is real. A failed negotiation could lead to a work stoppage, strike, or lockout, and that could wreck momentum. The WNBA has never faced a full-scale season shutdown. To do so now, while expansion looms and the business is on the edge of big growth, would be a blow. The league must avoid that. So how does this all end? With a deal. Because both sides believe a deal is better than no deal. The players want recognition, reward, and a future. The league wants growth, stability, and expansion. The most optimistic scenario? A new CBA that rises to the moment. One where team salary caps are dramatically higher. Maximum salaries for stars are significantly elevated. Minimums improve. Charter travel, larger rosters, better benefits all become the norm. Where a revenue share formula rewards players as the league grows. Where working conditions reflect the global talent market. Where players feel not only compensated but respected. A deal like that would not just mark progress, it would mark a paradigm shift. A more moderate outcome would deliver improvements, sure. Higher pay, better benefits, but keep the structure largely the same. That would be a win, but maybe not the big breakout the players seek. The low-end scenario, deal not done by deadline, some disruption, damage to growth, bitter labor relations. That's a risk the league and players both want to avoid. In the coming weeks and months, we will see the tempo increase. We'll see public posturing by players and league officials alike. We'll see details leak. We'll see pressure from fans, sponsors, media, even lawmakers. Because when so much is at stake, for the players, for the league, for the future of women's sport, the narrative becomes more than a negotiation document. It becomes a statement.